That was from the No Kings protest on July 4th in Chicago, Illinois. There were No Kings protests taking place across the United States on Independence Day, protesting the Trump regime. You see, Donald Trump and his regime wanted Independence Day to be all about Donald Trump and the lies he and his regime were spewing about the disastrous budget bill at their propaganda event in the White House. I know corporate news was not covering the protests against the Trump regime. We cover the protest here, as always, on the MeidasTouch network. What the corporate news was covering was Donald Trump's propaganda event. Once again, Donald Trump spent tens of millions of our taxpayer dollars on his propaganda events. There was a B-2 bomber that flew over the White House and other fighter jets that flew over the White House earlier in the day. Donald Trump was golfing on the taxpayer dime. And I want to just show you how Fox was covering this. Then I want to talk about the tragedy that hit the United States that Donald Trump was ignoring while he was spewing these lies about the disastrous budget bill and dancing to the YMCA. So here's how Fox was covering this Donald Trump propaganda Independence Day event. Let me show you this first. Play this clip.
The iconic.
Got to get the Trump dance in there. And I love that the First Lady also kind of joins along now. Like, it's taken her a few years, but she's
well, that was one of my favorite parts, is actually watching them watch the fireworks.
And just here's a photo of Donald Trump going to play golf earlier in the day. And what was taking place, and I'm sure you now know, is that there was a horrible, horrible natural disaster that took place in Kerr County, Texas. There was flash floods from the Guadalupe River. There was a storm that hit about 13 inches of rain that triggered these flash floods from the Guadalupe River. It resulted in at least 13 deaths as of yesterday afternoon. And then there were 23 additional people, 23 girls from Camp Mystic, a private Christian girls' camp, who had not been accounted for. That was in addition to the 13 bodies. These 23 girls from Camp Mystic had not been accounted for after the catastrophic flood that swept through Kerr County overnight Friday morning. And so here is just an image of the Guadalupe River. You can just, again, see for yourself what that looked like yesterday. Play this clip.
Holy shit, this is crazy. Me, wow.
Like, get me the hell out of here. Look at that big old piece of the tree. It's not raining.
So you have Donald Trump dancing to the YMCA while you have this horrific natural disaster. Then you have the Kerr County judge, someone named Rob Kelly, addressing the media about the flooding in the area. And he had no good answer why some of these camps, like Camp Mystic, were not evacuated earlier. And then he said he did not know that the storms were going to be this bad. Here's what Kerr County Judge Rob Kelly had to say. Here, play this clip.
Judge, why weren't these camps evacuated yesterday? Texas Department of Emergency Management put out an all call and said there's going to be a problem. We knew there was going to be a problem. Why weren't these camps evacuated?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, you're the judge. I mean, you're the top official here in this county. Why can't you answer that? There are kids missing. These camps were in harm's way. We knew this flood was coming.
We didn't know this flood was coming. Rest assured, no one knew this kind of flood was coming. We have floods all the time. This is the most dangerous river valley in the United States.
I agree.
And we deal with floods on a regular basis. When it rains, we get water. We had no reason to believe that this was going to be anything like what's happened here. None whatsoever.
So Juliet Kayyem says the following: I write about disasters and the absolute need for effective early alert systems. In a disaster, the runway is short, and the ability to provide the public with information quickly is essential. Fred Wellman writes, when do we start asking if the massive destruction to the National Weather Service and the NOAA is how massive flash floods came out of nowhere in Texas? There are dozens of missing children. Now, we don't know if the National Weather Service or the NOAA was unable to do their job. We do know that the Trump regime wants to defund those organizations. We do know the Trump regime wants to get rid of FEMA, which would be, again, absolutely devastating. And again, you see what's going on there from the Guadalupe River in Kerr County. Our hearts go out to everybody there. And what Donald Trump was doing all last night is he was posting images of the B-2 bomber and the other fighter jets. And he was posting other images from the propaganda event he held at the White House. And this is yet another example. We've covered this before, right? With Kentucky, with Indiana, with Missouri. There were so many, with Arkansas, North Carolina. There were so many natural disasters that have taken the lives of dozens of people. And Donald Trump has, just largely ignored all of that. Remember, we showed you the footage before of the St. Louis mayor during the storms that hit there, I think, back in May. And she was begging for assistance and saying, please just send FEMA. What are you doing? And she had to go public with it because FEMA was not showing up. Let me just show you. Here was another scene from one of the protests in Columbus, Ohio. Let me show this for you. Let's play it. And while Trump was getting protested, this was the event that he was holding at the White House, where he talked about he had to drop bombs and Iran had a skedaddle or something like that. Here, play this clip.
If you remember years ago, they had helicopters crashing into each other. It was a disaster, the hostages in Iran. And we had just the opposite. We didn't have any crashes. We didn't lose any planes. We didn't lose anybody. Those beautiful planes that you saw were totally stealth. They flew right over the center of a very hostile country, and they never even saw it coming. And then they said, skedaddle. They dropped the bombs. They said, skedaddle. And that big sucker turned over like this on its side, and it got out of there. Well, I'll tell you what, how they do that, but they can do it. I asked our great General Kane, how do they do that? Do they really love doing that? Look at them, they're all laughing. And
now, yesterday's official signage, like street signs, labeling Alligator Alcatraz and officially calling it Alligator Alcatraz, were going up. All of the MAGA influencers yesterday, again, while disaster struck Texas, which we're showing you before, they're all saying how Alligator Alcatraz, it's beautiful. I voted for this. Alligator Alcatraz. They kept on pushing that over and over and over again. I'll give you this. This is a great clip right here of California Governor Gavin Newsom responding to the Trump regime's talk about Alligator Alcatraz. Let's play this clip right here.
I know I made a comment about the Alcatraz alligator. That was just, these are flim-flammers. They're not serious people. What an embarrassment. Imagine the rest of the world looking at that. Mocking people, saying, well, if you're going to run, zig and zag. The President of the United States of America. I revere that office. We all should. Founding fathers didn't live and die to see that show. What an embarrassment. $450 million a year of wasted tax money for pure theater. So, there's strong opinions, but we'll continue to push back in very aggressive ways.
Now, going back to the Trump propaganda event at the White House, here he was saying how coal is back and how America is we're not gonna do wind, we're not gonna do solar, we're back to coal. Play this clip.
The factory workers, farmers, mechanics, waiters, waitresses, police officers, firefighters, coal miners, coal is back. Beautiful. I said you can't use the word coal unless you precede it by saying clean, beautiful coal.
As our editor-in-chief Ron Filipkowski writes, while the rest of the world races ahead with clean renewable energy technology and engineering, the dipshit who mythologizes the high-tariff, monopolistic robber baron, no-regulation era has the U.S. going all in on coal. Like, what the hell are we doing yesterday? So again, I just want you to think about this image yesterday, right? You have the protests, the No Kings protest across the country of the Trump regime. You have Trump holding this propaganda event where he lies about the disastrous budget bill, saying that there's no tax on Social Security. He's not addressing these horrific, catastrophic floods from the Guadalupe River in Kerr County, where you have these girls who went to this private camp in Texas who are now missing. You have Donald Trump golfing yesterday and posting images of the B-2s. And then also yesterday was another horrific day in Kyiv, where Vladimir Putin again escalated things. Since his call with Donald Trump 48 hours ago, the past 2 days in Kyiv have been the worst 48 hours essentially yet in terms of the bombardment of Kyiv. As the Institute for the Study of War explains, Russian forces conducted the largest combined drone and missile strike against Ukraine since the start of Russia's full-scale invasions on the night of July 3rd to 4th, primarily targeting Kyiv city. Russian forces have conducted 10 of the largest strikes in the war since January 2025. And this is as the United States has pulled away some of the significant military commitments and weapon commitments it promised to Ukraine. And also since Donald Trump's phone call 48 hours ago with Putin, Putin's response was to say that Donald Trump wants to make movies and TV shows with him, and they want to have more cultural exchanges between the United States and Russia. And then Putin's other response was to send more drones and more ballistic missiles into Kyiv than ever before. Let me show you this as well. I just think that as we kind of reflect on where we are, whether it's Alligator, Alcatraz, whether it's Trump's just utter cruelty there, the refusal to even acknowledge and be a leader in the face of a horrific natural disaster. All Trump cared about yesterday was his show and his Kim Jong-un style propaganda show. This clip right here to me just kind of sums up just the total collapse of morality of all these MAGA people. And you may remember this. This is when Pope Francis gave a speech, when Pope Francis was alive, to a joint session of Congress, when former President Obama was the president. And Pope Francis talks about the importance of immigrants and how we're a nation of immigrants. And I just want you to watch this and watch the response of Rubio when Marco Rubio was a young senator at the time. And you just see how people like that slip. Here, play this clip.
Time and again, Francis boldly raised controversial issues, immigration and the refugee crisis.
We, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners because most of us were once foreigners.
Nearby, Senator Marco Rubio, a presidential candidate and son of immigrants, held back the tears.
Yeah, so you had yesterday Donald Trump golfing, Donald Trump throwing himself a party, making Independence Day about himself while people were protesting, while tragedy struck Texas in that Kerr County area, Guadalupe River flooding, 13 inches of rain, flash floods, horrific. Our heart goes out to everybody there. Trump doing nothing about it, and Putin escalating in Russia, escalating in Kyiv from Russia. Tell me what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million.
New Meidas merch drop. Check out the latest pro-democracy sticker packs, t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and more. All at store.meidastouch.com.